As if lepers didn't turn white in the Bible, and now it's a sign of purity, supposedly. In the world today, it distorts what is clear. What I did as a child is further behind us all every day because we're supposed to grow up. I was put under so many schoolmasters intent on normalizing my and everyone's regurgitation, or it's instantly what comes out of us. We've been programmed. When they say something, we're programmed through first we're children, then we're under schoolmasters. They normalize us so that the first thing they think of is the Colorado River cut the Grand Canyon through billions of years. It's planned. Now, when I was a young man, when I arrived at manhood as a young man, I was there unprepared, looking back, if not having been changed by God and becoming a new man, a completely new creature by making my dead spirit alive and becoming elect, predestined, known before the foundation of the earth, chosen, called, faithful to the end, I hope, because some are adopted into the family of God. It is almost as if, let's say your age. How old are you? Okay, take that age. And he walked down when you were born and he said, everybody born, I'll take you, yeah, you. And everyone is gifted with talents and he expects you to live up to them. When my prayers are answered, with or without me, I'll be old by the time 2046 gets here. You must not let go of the plow, so to speak. If persistence was easy, it would not be a learned habit most people do not apply themselves to. Above the abyss, cautiously optimistic, some will live. I know. Blessed are those who make it. There's going to be it's not a rapture, it's a rescue by fire. There's going to be encompassing you about more than they are now. Believe it. I'm kind of getting a view of how bad it is. And now when like somebody asked some medical advice through that email, and when I say, like apple cider, what should you do? I need to try something. I always would say start with apple cider vinegar. If there's something wrong with you, sluggish or whatever, your complexion and whatever, start with apple cider vinegar for a couple of months. It's not something you have to lock in. Here's something that you take for the rest of your life. So, and like with all of that, take all of my advice with that grain of salt that they say, because I am not a doctor. Where is that disclaimer? I must have reset my computer or something. Means I have to go to my desktop again. There's this thing. Don't take, I'll give advice on medical, financial, spiritual. They want me to disclaim it with the fact that you should always use your own brain. Okay. So here's a vote. Is that a vote for apple cider vinegar? I know. Now that is it. It's the taste. Here's something I didn't know until I was in my 50s. They make it in a pill. They dry it out, put it in a capsule. You don't taste it. It's apple cider vinegar, non-GMO, organic, in a pill. You don't have to taste it. Yeah, I get it. It's yucky. It made me feel like a real man because I could take it. But I do colloidal silver, some other things, but we do care about our health, right? So let's see. Again, here we go. I did a show last night. Today I want to do another show. It's what I like to do. We always talk about the four phases of water. I've entered before structured phased water. So I entered structured phase economics. That's an unusual number. The economic cycle, every economic cycle has four stages: expansion, peak, contradiction, and trough. Your friend Luther, you know him as Yaswil Soring. He thinks we're in a trough right now, and he compared it to a gutter. I was having nothing but intuitive agreement with that. Oh my gosh, they're washing. It expands, it peaks, and I think we're in I'm hoping we're in the contraction because yeah, the trough is even going to be worse. So it's a hotly debated. Not much. Here's four stages. Investopedia. Okay, let's get to let's see what they said about the trough. I didn't see it. The trough of the cycle is reached when the economy hits a low point with supply and demand hitting bottom before a recovery. So we're due for a recovery. The low point in the cycle represents a painful moment. Thanks, AI. Do you know what it's like to be hungry, you stupid computer? With a worldwide, world spread negative impact. Oh no. I guess water. Water. Okay, I had it pulled up. There was the advice to Jason. I don't think that is necessary here. Jason. Heresy in the comment sections. Doggone it. What was this one?
Entire Zionist history, culture, Jewish identity is all contrived. It's synthetic, it's artificial. If people sat down, and they still do today, there are think tanks, JPPI, and various others like that. And they think, how could we further advance Zionism? How could we change the story? How could we better the story? How could we progress? How could we get more followers? And one of the things they did was they wanted to make Jews.
These are wolves warning you about other wolves. They're trying to expose a lie and sell it with another lie. There's no hope in the going back to the Torah. So here's Dr. Tom Cowan is back in a big way. And I've actually watched a couple of videos from Jesse the Chappus.
Fearing salt. How do you determine how much you're using? Is it just to taste?
Yeah, just taste.
And then what about how much water to drink on a daily basis? We have this societal norm of something around 8 glasses a day where we're bringing bottles with us and sipping on them throughout the day, making sure we get that 8 glasses. There's different people saying different things, but in that range, how do you look at amount of water we should be drinking?
The reality is, and if you look at normal biochemistry, 99% of it's total BS. But they do talk about like the Krebs cycle, right? Glucose and goes through all these different steps. And the end result is ATP, which they say is energy, which isn't, but they say that it is, and water and carbon dioxide. So in other words, we're told that we generate water from the metabolism of food, right? That's what we're told. And when you put something through a fatty acid metabolism, you generate a lot of water, which means we're always generating water in our body. And that's our water. that has our signature. It has our energetic blueprint. So I think that's the best water for us. So I don't drink much water. I drink a glass of water with lemon juice in the morning.
Just his contrary opinions. What else is new? Oh, the heart is not a pump. How long has much to RJ's family chagrin, has he been on board that the heart is not a pump going on 10 years now? Yeah, it was. Rocks used to be a heart pump.
Okay, the other piece I want to make sure we delve into is this theory that you've disproven that the heart is a pump. So this ties into what we've been talking about here. You've mentioned energy field. There's a lot more going on with this organ than conventional medicine would lead us to believe. But let's start with
You can't carry any treasure with you to heaven. You have to build it up in your heart. God is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him, and he loves to be a rewarder. He is a God who loves to reward those who diligently seek him. And when you do those things that are equivalent to the talents he's given to you, once you've been saved by grace, you're going to be judged by those works, and you will build up gold, silver, and precious stone, or wood, hay, and stubble, mostly through your heart. It's where it starts, but it gets deposited throughout.
the pump piece, and then we can move from there.
Right. So with everything in life, it's good to define your terms. Otherwise, you don't know what you're talking about. So when I say the heart is not a pump, what do I mean by a pump? I mean a pressure propulsion device. What does that mean? It means that the reason the blood moves around the body is it's propelled by the heart. And the way it's propelled is the ventricle, especially the left ventricle, contracts. It's a muscle. It contracts. That increases the pressure and propels the liquid, i.e. the blood, around the body. That's what.
Or it could be better described in a more less violent contracting way of a swastika, in with the good, out with the bad, where it is an infinite analemma vortex spinning in infinity, in with the good, out with the bad, until our prostate fails, and then we die.
We're told. Again, so that's the claim. Now, I looked at this claim, 40 some years ago and said, okay, how long are the tubes in the body? 10,000 miles or so. So you got a 1 pound organ with walls like this thick, and you got sticky fluid in there, in those tubes that are 10,000 miles long, if you put them end to end, with stuff in the tubes that's approximately the internal diameter of the tube. In other words, the red blood cells are about the same size as the diameter of the tube. What are the chances you can get a 1 pound organ to push sticky fluid 10,000 miles?
Not good.
100%.
Not good. And not only that, but this fluid, if you go do a velocity.
This is forgive me. I hope you can find that video and go back to watch it. It's really, really good, and he gets into what causes the arteries, and it's amazing. We don't have time to watch the whole thing, but I don't know his faith. I'd love to talk to him about it. He gets into the fourth phase of water.
Yeah. So I start thinking, there's something wrong here. And that's how I came to everything. This doesn't make any sense to me. Or my favorite expression is, this is weird, right? Because if there's supposed to be 80% water and I can cut you up and I never see any water in you, anybody. And so then you say, well, what, Jello, 90% water, 97% water. What phase is it in?
Number 4.
Not ice. It's not water because you can poke it and nothing comes out. It's definitely not steam. So it turns out there's a 4th phase of water. It's called a gel phase, structured water, crystalline water, Gerald Pollack.
Easy
water, lots of different names.
The exclusion
Stars.
zone.
And all of the water in us is structured water. If it isn't, it's a puddle. And then you have a deep.
So I'm not going to be trying to get into making money, but I think that the Victor Schauberger's descendants, well, they're charging, $600 for something that I think, once you're good at it, you should be able to make it for $100, not $600. It's a ripoff. Look at that. They're filtering water, monitoring DNA, eDNA to make sure some muscles of the fish don't get through. So they filter the water, and that's what's in the water. They didn't find any mussels though, so things are working out fine. Now we'll get into the idea is when my mind was stirred and I remembered this Whitewater POW camp, I remembered they talked more about how it was a psychological study where some POWs were put in harsh camps with mean guards, and they had one camp in Canada where everybody was nice to them. They said, well, you're so far in the middle of nowhere, you don't need a fence, and you can work in town, you can order from catalogs. It was a psychological study. And a couple of the prisoners actually got married and fell in love and came back after the war to their Canadian wives. It kind of, their story goes like this. It was a labor camp for Nazis who had participated in some of the, really bad, the Africa Corps, the Second Battle of El Alamein. And when they were captured, they were sent to Canada, given 50 cents a day, cut down trees, and it added up over a couple of years, and they could order from the Thomas Eaton catalog in Canada. That's a big deal. They threatened to strike one time on POWs. Nazis said, we're going on strike because we ordered some jammies, some pajamas, and they didn't get there on time. They thought the guards might have stolen them. However, normally they were friends because the staff was getting liquor, getting booze made by the prisoners. Fraternized with the locals. Many civilians were sympathetic. They were Ukrainian and very, from what I understand, historically siding with Nazi ideology. Ring a bell? So then I studied this. This is from last night, things that interest me that I wanted to pass on. The Reber Plan, named for John Reber, an actor and a theatrical producer. It was a plan to fill in parts of the San Francisco Bay, the parts marked in red. He was going to fill them in, turn them into hydroelectric things. So this was something seriously considered. How serious was it considered? Well, they drew up the plans. I wonder what that says there. They said that it was so bad in 1930s and 40s, the cars, the Golden Gate Bridge couldn't handle it. The San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge couldn't handle all the traffic between Oakland and San Francisco. So the theatrical producer wanted to open up a 36-lane freeway. Maybe there were in the past something like this. And they cleaned out what they cleaned out. They painted the bridge they could paint, and then they had to give up on this. They said it was going to cost 100 million. It was way more. So they drew up the plans and look at that. Tunnels, tubes. It was all an imaginary thing. He was going to do it. How about that? So they never did it because they built this. It's still here to this day, housed like in a warehouse with Indiana Jones's lost artifacts of the things that belong in a museum. What are all these things under the water? So this is a whole chart of the bay and the things that are under the water. It kind of looks like they're piers and buildings that just fell off of San Francisco. That or somebody dredged canals a long time ago and planted trees or something. Keep off the model is always good advice. Any more weirdness going on here? It's all weird. So they built this and they said, no, that's probably a better view of how it, whatever blew over it, underneath it, it looks like it was part of a buildings and things. So this is still in a shed somewhere. This is what they built. They told that guy, no, you do not get to build a 36-lane highway. This was in the 1940s. 2 large dams in the San Francisco Bay. In the San Francisco Bay. We thought they had it bad after the hurricane. They had traffic where they needed to go. We got to spend all the money in the world to provide a more reliable freshwater supply to the farms. We're going to need it. They thought in 1953, they said, well, let's do it. J. Edgar Hoover, the man who built the Hoover Dam, or at least he gave it the thumbs up, said, go, do it. I like it. What do we know about history? They did the same thing in the 20s. They were going to fill in. Maybe they were filled in. They could only clean up things for so long. They ran out of money, ran out of time, but they certainly were not in the trough or in the decline of a gigantic engineering and colonization idea by a German promoted in Atlantropa, Panropa, across the Strait of Gibraltar? Delusions of grandeur much in the time of Satan's little season? I think so. Another one of the utopian goals without Christ, it's not going to work because first they had to have a global so that they could make a global empire after a big war, after Satan has gathered all the nations to say, as soon as you get rid of the Christians who didn't take the you-know-what, we'll be safe. Then I studied this. There was another saltwater barrier on the Delaware River project in the late 1950s to convert lower reaches of the Delaware into the freshwater lake. Well, another ambitious plan. No pictures, but I imagine they say it's similar to the Reber plan. But did they do it or not? It was proposed to carry water. Costs were projected in the 60s to be that much. Alternate intake, existing, estimated, were estimated. Did you do it or not? It was proposed. They found these in San Francisco because a man on a bicycle in 1980 found that if you access certain manhole covers in San Francisco, you can even take your bike down, and he made maps of the Bay Area underwater rapid transit tube that was only rumored to exist. And they only knew about part of it. He found out it sprawling. Let's see. Built in the immersed tube style, 3.6 miles long, opened in 74, final part of BART. Sure, it looks like every other tunnel that they built back in the day. Same rivet style, same shield production, same size. Let's see what else I studied. Does it tie in? The Posey and Webster Street tubes. Alameda to Oakland, running beneath the Oakland estuary, precast concrete segments, completed in 1928. I think they were lost for a while. Second oldest underwater vehicular tunnel in the United States. A narrow train and road traffic completed in 1871, 1873, a swing bridge. No Wikipedia page for a swing bridge in 1873. And everybody's involved. Needed to make tunnels. So there it is. 1922. Just drive down and drive under. That's a portal, all right. Costs a lot of money to maintain them. Reminders of the magnetron. No moving parts. Change to the world. Miraculous discovery. Oh, I melted a chocolate bar. Now we can track you with cell phones. And it all leads to this, that same thing of the Zionist, the Tesla. It's all on the same thing. You either are going to be like, well, you accept part of it, or all of it is a rewritten lie. I wanted to remind you, they had a town in Cobalt, Canada, where you could drop water, send it through a Venturi intake, cause pressure, and they ran a whole town, a mining town, off of the electricity this generated with no moving parts. So free electricity after probably an expensive setup, but it worked for 100 years. Now I can close it out. Reminded it, showed it. This is another one like that. They used this, the THROMP, Trump. It was invented, that pressure of dropping the water. It was invented in this town by, I wanted to study what it was because it was what they did in Canada. It's a forced perspective, a Trump deceived the eye. That's why they called it a Trump. Jesuits love it. Love to talk about Mary. They can't get enough of it. Became a big thing. Let's see what this is. So here it is, a Trump. And this is what powered the forge. Brick slack encased iron pipe of the heat exchanger that preheated the air blast. Split rock. Catalan process, malleable arm, malleable iron spread throughout once they learned how to do it, they spread it everywhere. They needed lime kilns. They're everywhere. there was a time of escalation, like when King David was the king, started building and saving money for his own temple. And it was all a trump, something from the old days. We don't need to go over the book of Jude again. Something odd was going on.
To house a very special high-tech communication system that was only for really cool people.
You know, when you dial 999 in this country for emergencies, it actually connects you directly to a totally separate telephone exchange, like an emergency exchange. Hence the weird 3-digit number 999. That's the river wall and Lambeth Bridge over there. I'm going to Horseferry Road. Post-war, the General Post Office built down here a top secret telephone exchange called the Federal Telephone Exchange. There was one mention of it in Parliament in 1960. For many decades, from any public phone on a public phone network, you could actually dial.
Wow. But we need to hear more about underneath the city.
Noticed. I'm up on these steps. Nobody ever climbs up onto these steps anymore. As soon as I came up here, suddenly lots of people started swarming about, I think, considering climbing up here. The National Gallery. Running beside the National Gallery, underneath that road over there, is the Northern Line, going into Charing Cross Northern Line station. From behind us is the Bakerloo line coming from Piccadilly Circus. It runs under here, about 20 metres below, and it goes in there into Charing Cross Bakerloo line station.
Wow. Now, are they going to get underground in this one? Or just talk about it?
But there's a congregation of exits here, 4 of them, very close together. Goldman Sachs. But in the post-war period, if I was here, I'd actually be in sort of like an industrial area. This was printing works and printing warehouses where all the newspapers were stored before they were packaged.
All right, that's a good view of the town. Let's see what else we got here. Huh. This is kind of serious because this is as solid as it gets for the real world, the Globers. He would have been somebody I would be debating. I was the top, I thought I was at the top of the theology for Presbyterianism, as RJ thought he was at the top of the theology for Lutheranism. And I'm not picking on Lutheranism today. I'm sure John Calvin had some weird ideas about baptism, but one thing is for sure. Having your kids infant baptized doesn't save them. It's not a mark of salvation. It's something that you do to set them apart. It's keeping them holy. It's like circumcision. It's what circumcision is. It was a sign, not everyone that got circumcised was saved. So I really felt that if someone I admire this much as can be mistaken, that infants need the application of salvation, well, that's settled before the foundation of the world. And what you do as a parent, and although I'm a sprinkler when I will sprinkle to baptize, and I don't think you need to be immersed. It's whatever you do, you're not applying salvation.
Should perish, but has a means of their redemption. Jesus says this explicitly, that in Matthew 19:14, he says, "Let the little children come to me and do not forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of heaven." So Jesus is saying the kingdom of heaven belongs to children. And if children need to be regenerated, if children are in need of a new birth, and children enter the kingdom of heaven, that means that children do receive the new birth. So the question is, how is it that these infants and children are able to get the new birth? How does God apply the new birth?
Many are called, few are chosen, known from before the foundation of the earth. It's kind of like that. Kind of like that. No way did one guy, all of these, we're going to watch one segment here from the Paint Explainer. This guy, he is bad science, is bad, it killed millions, allegedly.
Was a Soviet agricultural scientist who became very powerful under the rule of Joseph Stalin. He rejected the science of genetics, which is based on the work of Gregor Mendel, and the idea that traits are passed through genes. Instead, Lysenko believed that traits learned during a plant's or animal's life could be passed on to their offspring. For example, he said that exposing wheat seeds to cold would make future plants more resistant to cold. He also claimed that plants of the same type would help each other grow instead of competing for food. These ideas had no scientific proof, but he was good at gaining political support. Since his theories promised quick results during a time of food shortages, Stalin and the Communist Party strongly supported him, and in 1940, Lysenko became the director of the Soviet Union's Institute of Genetics. This gave him control over all biology research in the country. He used his power to attack real genetic science, and scientists who disagreed with him were fired. Many were sent to prison.
Doesn't it sound, he probably was a foolish man, but it said, oh, that he didn't do the status quo. We should have trusted the genetics and things. But, this has made the top 15 for the computers.
States invaded Iraq, U.S. President George W. Bush and UK Prime Minister Tony Blair said the goals were to remove weapons of mass destruction, stop Saddam Hussein's support for terrorism, and free the Iraqi people. The U.S. government also claimed that Saddam had ties to the terrorist group Al-Qaeda, which carried out the 9/11 attacks. Before the war began, the Roman Empire was
Here's another weird one. They say it was an accident, just a mistake.
Serious trouble, as it was too large, unstable, and constantly facing attacks from outside enemies and rebellions from within. This period is known as the crisis of the 3rd century. In 284, a military
Leading up to when they said the Roman Catholics became the Christian God of the world, and everybody's been worshiping Mary because they said it's okay ever since.
military leader named Diocletian became emperor, and seeing that the empire was too big and had too many problems for one person to rule alone, he shared his power. In 286, he made a trusted officer, Maximian, his co-emperor. Diocletian ruled the eastern half of the empire, while Maximian ruled the western half. Then, in 293, Diocletian expanded this system into what is called the Tetrarchy, or Rule of Four. Each emperor chose a junior emperor to help rule. Diocletian chose Galerius for the east, and Maximian chose Constantius for the west. Each of the 4 rulers had their own part of the empire, their own court, and their own army. This made it easier to respond quickly to problems in different areas, and for a while, this new structure worked well. The Tetrarchy
That was a
brought
time of
peace, protected the
rising.
borders, and ended the crisis. But it did have a big weakness. In 305, Diocletian became sick and did something no Roman emperor had ever done before. He retired. He wanted the 2 junior emperors to become the new emperors, but the system quickly fell apart. The sons
And it led to Constantine and everything else. What's my algorithm saying? What's going on in the world today? Bad cops. This guy now is showing that the stones are actually the body of Shiva. Sure. There's that video we just watched. Very interesting. Now, Great, I already have that pulled up. Versailles. What did it look like in 1923? After World War I, they had, the armistice was signed there. And by 1923, it was a shambles in ruins. But John D. Rockefeller Jr. said, au contraire, Au contraire.
Se relève péniblement des 4 années de guerre. Depuis la signature du traité de Versailles en 1919 dans la Galerie des Glaces, le château de Versailles a perdu de sa superbe. Le domaine ressort affaibli de la guerre. La dernière restauration d'envergure remonte à Louis-Philippe. Henri Lapose, conservateur au Palais des Beaux-Arts de Paris et directeur de la Renaissance de l'art français et des industries de luxe,
I don't know. I'm beginning to think World War I was Armageddon.
intervient au profit du château de Versailles. En janvier 1923, il publie un numéro spécial dans lequel il alerte l'opinion publique sur l'état du château. La situation est en effet plus que critique. Le char d'Apollon se craquelle, les statues s'effritent, les parquets s'affaissent, les bassins se fissurent. Des travaux urgents sont à mener, travaux qui nécessiteraient plus de fonds que ceux alloués par l'administration des monuments historiques. Henri Lapose en appelle à l'action commune.
Si l'on veut redonner à Versailles sa véritable physionomie, son élégance
We need
française, si
money.
l'on veut lui enlever l'aspect catastrophique et cyclonesque que les années lui ont infligé, et aussi la négligence des hommes, il faut de l'argent. Very brilliant and interesting occasion.
Le 4 juillet, la famille revient visiter le château. Ce que voit le philanthrope l'émeut profondément.
It's a star fort, baby.
L'état inquiétant du château fait naître l'idée d'une donation. Face aux ravages du temps que subit ce château, qu'il considère comme
Hey, look, I'm going to make that a catchphrase or I'm going to die trying. It's a star fort, baby.
du patrimoine international, John D. Rockefeller décide d'engager un premier don sur ses fonds personnels.
Une beauté immense était en train de s'étioler, et je me suis senti accablé.
What do you do when you're overwhelmed? You want to give somebody 20 million, equivalent to what, who knows, a billion or just, maybe 450 million today? I don't know.
En 1924, Raymond Poincaré, président de la République française, reçoit une lettre inespérée. John Rockefeller propose à la France une aide de 20 millions de francs pour la restauration de la cathédrale de Reims, des châteaux de Versailles et de
Way to
Fontainebleau.
go. Way to go.
Sur ces 20 millions de francs, 10 sont alloués à la restauration de Versailles.
Je considérerais
France is the center of the Jacobin, the Roman Catholic movement. Go.
Les premières interventions sont conformes au souhait du philanthrope de procéder en priorité à des réparations utilitaires. Rénovation des toits, sujet aux infiltrations. Rénovation des façades et remise en état des éléments extérieurs. Plus qu'un simple banquier au chevet de Versailles, Rockefeller se montre impliqué et souhaite que son financement serve aux parties du domaine qui en ont le plus besoin.
All right. I do want to watch some more of this, but I do want to ask you seriously, if you were a wolf, a ravenous wolf in sheep's clothing, and you really believed that something was going to happen, but it'd be okay because you had your other promises, and they told you to, you're going to the caves too. The people that were going to serve the Lord, do you think that they were being told, take this secret thing, take that secret thing, because when we come out of the caves, we're still wolves and we're going to be planning it? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make like, yeah, that's what they would do in the movies. They would know they're ravenous wolves and they're going to come out to deceive. So they would take that secret information to act like, look how smart we are later. How long ago did they really rebuild Versailles? Where did they do with all that money from the Colorado mining days when the silver boom crashed?
Besoin. Les travaux débutent en 1925, sous la direction du successeur de Chaussemiche, Patrice Bonnet. Une grande attention est portée à la durabilité des réfections, raison pour laquelle les matériaux d'origine sont remplacés par d'autres.
These are only photographs of, you know, what it could, they could say this was us when we built the Erie Canal, when they only cleaned out the Erie Canal. They didn't actually build it. They touched it, they cleaned it out and made it work again. Is that what happened between World War I and World War II with the money? The creature from Jekyll Island? propping up the Jesuit, the Rosicrucian, the Jacobean plan from the very beginning. And it was the same when they were going to hit the ground running after the 1,000 years of Christ. There was another judgment. The grapes of wrath were reaped and the tares were reaped. That's the grapes of wrath. And then the wheat, the ones, the ones that stayed on the narrow road, that were faithful to the end, that when all of Asia departed the gospel of Paul, as it says, 2 Timothy chapter 1:15. And that's where the 7 churches of Revelation, all of them were in Asia. There was only a remnant in every church. When did they get this thing working again? When did they find it? Why have they kept it such a big, big deal? You know, I know, and the American people know. What most people don't know is that there were 15 colonies. One stayed with Spain and one decided to stay with Great Britain. And those was West Florida and East Florida, as they called them, I believe. And this was another one of the great mistakes of history that was on that list. King Louis, who ended up getting beheaded, decided to help the Jacobians because of his friends Thomas Jefferson and the Hellfire Club, Ben Franklin, and those guys. He gave them the money to fight Britain. He said, go get him. We'll even send you armies and help. That sounds like a lot to prop up the United States. 1 billion libras in debt. And no wonder they were going off with his head. But he did his job because, he was convinced the English tyranny in France said, go get him. Here's all the money that will bankrupt us and bring on Napoleon and a revolution of our own. It was planned. The molten sea. Somehow they use this. If you didn't know, they use these Bible verses to prove that the Bible was not true, because they would have you believe that because it says that it was 30 cubits around and the diameter was 10, they'd say, oh no, that would make it divided by 3. And a circle is 3.14. So the Bible's wrong. And then they show you how they roll it on a table instead of rolling it around the inside of a circumference of a cup or something. It's all there to make you think you live on a globe, that the world exploded into existence, and that somehow you can be emotionally moved by a speaker telling you about Jesus Christ, even if he's telling you, while he's speaking in tongues or doing anything else, if he can convince you and scare you into believing that you're going to go to hell tonight if Jesus comes back, they call that you being born again. That's not how it happens. That's not the analogy of being born again. When you are born again, the analogy is it's like when you were born. Did you choose to be born again? Did you hear some stirring message and decide to be born? No. Some people are born of the Spirit. They are not healed. They are given new life, which means why some of us understand his blood washes away my sins. And to other people, he was sure an excellent teacher, and we should be like that. No. There was a God who was a spirit, and those who worship the true God must worship him in spirit and truth. And then there was a sin in heaven. And he was going to show them as an object lesson. He made an earth and then another creation of the dust of a previous creation where there were men. And he said, all creation, including the spirits, will worship that of is going to be made flesh. And he became flesh and dwelt among us. The spirit became flesh. There is only one creator God. It is the Lord Jesus Christ. And from before the foundation of the earth, it's said that he has an elect because everybody is stained with sin and nobody would make it. So somebody had to pay the price for it. He did. He did. Because he will be glorified and he will show that sin cannot stand. And he'll hold himself to that same high level every day. And don't tell me, if I only knew the will of God in my life. It tells us over and over, this is the will of God. Present your body like a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God. For this is the will of God. It's a flat earth nation. The golden age has passed because the mud flood was Armageddon. They added 1,000 years, but there really was 1,000 years where the beast and the false prophet were in a lake of fire. Satan was thrown into an abyss. And then he was let out. And it says that there was some group as fugitives. And a lot of us think we were messed with, turned into orphan trained, brained rejects, the offspring of people who were probably worked in factories. And from what I understand, they work 6-7 days a week, 14 hours a day. They did, and if somebody told them, hey, now the earth's a globe, they didn't care. Okay, whatever. And then they sent their kids to normalizing schools. And their kids came home and said, can you help me with my homework? No. Is the world a globe? Yeah. What'd they say? Yep, it's a fucking globe. It's that easy. Me and my friends will never tell you anything else. Why would we? We're called, we're chosen, we're trying to be faithful. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Aderese. Nakame. Adios, amigo.